Top of the morning to you, ladies and gents. Welcome back to another episode of Silverstones. My name is Joran Headley, and I will be your host for today's show, where we're going to be doing our weekly show called 21 Milli, the weekly cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, financial, geopolitical news station that's named after 21 million coins, which is how many Bitcoin there will ever be in existence. So that's the focus here. We're going to be talking about a few different things in terms of the topics. I'm going to be sharing my screen in just a second here. But before that, let's just see where things are at in terms of the market, the narrative, the perception of Bitcoin, and the price. Although I'm not going to be predicting prices, I think it's important just to talk about where we're at. So we can look back in a couple of years or whatever it may be and see how silly we actually were. So either way, good or bad, how silly we were. So what's going on in the market right now? I think that we're still seeing the impacts of the FTX collapse. Since then, we've seen the BlockFi, which is kind of a similar kind of crypto exchange. They filed for bankruptcy 2 days ago. And so that's really just having an impact on the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin market overall. And do I think that that's fair or relevant? I do not. I think that Bitcoin and FTX and BlockFi could not be further apart in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, what the actual investment is, and just the importance of holding your own Bitcoin versus keeping your Bitcoin on an exchange like FTX or BlockFi. So before we go any further here, as we always mention on the show, if you have any Bitcoin in the digital world right now on any of the exchanges, make sure you set up your own private wallet. That could be Moon Wallet, that could be Exodus Wallet, any sort of wallet, hot or cold device. Make sure to get it off the exchanges. There's never been more reason for that than there is right now. And I do not think that we're done. I don't think that FTX or BlockFi were the last to fall and being exposed as Ponzi schemes, which is exactly what they are. I think that there's going to be a ton of cryptocurrency projects themselves that get wiped out. And I think we're going to continue to see more and more exchanges. If they're not doing things properly, they're going to get exposed, and they're ultimately going to have the same fate as FTX had. So I do not think this is done. I'm actually surprised that the price of Bitcoin hasn't dropped more than it has. I think since this whole thing went down, it's only dropped about 7% down. So it was at 20,000. Now it's down at 17,000. So not a huge deal. And I think that that's because the majority of people who are holding Bitcoin understand that it had nothing to do with FTX. That was fraud. That was a Ponzi scheme. That was a centralized organization who was stealing from customers. And Bitcoin itself is completely different than that. And people within the Bitcoin community talk about, as I do, of holding your own Bitcoin in your own custody. So the whole point of this mission, I guess, is not chasing quick profits, but it's decoupling ourselves from the centralized authorities, the central banks, the governments, etc. So keep that in mind. It's a long-term hold. We're not getting in this for a month or two and hoping to cash out some profits. It's a long-term hold, and it's a long-term vision. So I want to mention that, and that's actually going to pour into a couple things that we got going on here in terms of the news reports for the week. So let's start. Let's get her going here. Where are we starting? We're starting with the Bank of Canada making the news. We got a CBC feature. Very trustworthy people. Something that you can always bet your dollar that they're telling the truth. But in this case, doesn't matter what their spin on it. I didn't even read the article. I just saw the headline, and it says Bank of Canada lost $522 million in the third quarter, marking its first loss in history. So again, I did not spend too much time reading what CBC has to say about this because frankly, I do not give a shit. And it's probably 90% lies anyways. I did see something at the bottom that it was more of an accounting issue than a financial issue. But this bank's been around for 87 years. And this was the first time in its history that it's lost money. So they're blaming it on kind of a timing issue between interest rates on their bonds maturing and new interest rates taking out new debt. Whatever it is, it's not good. And I'm not going to spend too much time digging into this. I just really wanted to bring it to your attention, bring it to light. And if you want to take some further investigation into it, by all means, go ahead. But it's just a sign of the times. And we've been seeing too much of this first time in history, I think, whether that's in our social life or economic life. It's if it's not making you uncomfortable or question things a little bit at this stage, then I'm not really sure what to tell you. And if any of this offends you in any way or you're triggered in any sort of way, you're probably watching the wrong channel. So we're going to keep moving on here. I don't know what's going on with the internet here. Hopefully things are okay. But let's move on. So touching on that, first time in 87 years, the Bank of Canada lost money. I wanted to bring this to light. This is from the game of Monopoly. And it says the Federal Reserve or the Central Bank or the Bank of Canada. If you don't understand how it works, just start with rule number 11 from the Monopoly board game, which states, what happens if the bank runs out of money? Some players think that the bank is bankrupt if it runs out of money. The bank never goes bankrupt. To continue playing, use slips of paper to keep track of each player's banking transactions. So, I mean, this is something that, again, we've never seen in history before where a bank's losing money. And usually I think that they would probably just print money or issue new money, but I think we're past the point at almost 10% inflation now where that's an option for them. So this says the bank never goes bankrupt, but I mean, it never has. And we'll leave it with that. More on the federal bank, the Pentagon, their Federal Reserve, everything going on at the same time here. So the IRS, the internal reporting, whatever it is in the States, similar to our CRA here, is warning Americans that this tax season they must report payments on Venmo, PayPal, and Zelle of over $600. Meanwhile, the Pentagon just failed its 5th audit in a row, as they were unable to account for 61% of their $3.5 trillion in assets. So what does this mean? They're coming after you and your $600 transactions they want to know about. But it's just okay that they failed their 5th audit in a row and they're unable to account for 61% of their assets. What is going on? I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of past the point of knowing what to say. There's just so many signs that I see over and over again every day of something bad is about to come. Do I know what that looks like? No. Do I have an idea of what it could look like? Yes. And is there any sort of timeline that I'm willing to put on that? Absolutely not. But the thing is you should be thinking about how to set yourself up for what could come in the future. And I think part of that is just putting a small bet, even 1% of your portfolio, into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is completely separate from the FTXs of the world, the Pentagons of the world, and the governments and Canadian banks of the world. So something to keep in mind. There's a bunch of stuff going on, and I just really wanted to bring it to your attention. So last week I posted something on my Instagram account for Silver. Geez, I can't even say it. Silverstones, and it was a weekend plan. I was talking about Ethereum and why I think it's absolute junk. It's very centralized and similar to how our banks work in terms of no fixed supply, no schedule of creating new Ethereum, and a few other ties to the World Economic Forum, etc. So if you haven't watched that video, make sure to check it out. Maybe I'll put it at the end of this video as the whatever it's called, the bookmark. I don't know. I'm new to YouTube. But here's my plan. And so if you didn't do this last weekend, make sure you take some time this weekend to do this. If you're a holder of Ethereum and you understand and possibly agree with what I'm saying about Ethereum, take this weekend to convert it to Bitcoin. If you have any other cryptocurrencies that have the same kind of structure in terms of no fixed supply, no real use case, Ponzi scheme kind of vibes, convert that into Bitcoin. The second part of that is once you've done that, make sure you immediately take it off of the exchange, whatever you used to exchange it into Bitcoin, remove it off of that exchange, whether that's Exodus, whether that's Binance, whether that's BitBuy, any exchange, get it off of there. Third thing is decentralize yourself for the future. So what I've been talking about kind of in this on the Instagram and a few other posts I've been talking about is spreading yourself out in terms of what exchanges you're on. So if you're somebody who just likes to have one exchange, for example, ShakePay, if you're strictly ShakePay, that's fine. I respect that. It's easier to keep track of things on there, but there could be a day where ShakePay goes down. And it's usually when you want it to happen the least. And so when the price is either running up and you want to exchange some of your Bitcoin for cash, or the price has crashed and you want to exchange some of your cash for Bitcoin, that's usually when these exchanges go down for maintenance, they call it, which is really them shutting down the exchange and just grabbing as much Bitcoin as they possibly can at that price. So the point is, if you're strictly on ShakePay, you're kind of going to be handcuffed at that time. And when all this is going down, you're not going to have time to go set up a new account on BitBuy or Coinberry or Newton or whatever it may be. So you want to set yourself up now for when that time comes. So that's one reason for doing it. And if you're going to be investing, if you're somebody who's just kind of getting into this right now and you want to put in, say, $400 or $500, I recommend doing it on a few different exchanges because they all have welcome bonuses onto their platforms. So when you sign up for ShakePay, you get $10. When you sign up for BitBuy, I think it's like $40. Coinberry's 25, I think. But the point is if you're spending the money buying Bitcoin anyways, you might as well do it on a few different exchanges and take advantage of their welcome bonuses. So I don't have it on here. I should have. I'm going to put a link below in the description here where it'll take you to silverstones.ca, where I have all my referral links, which you can use to sign up for these exchanges and in turn earn some free Bitcoin. So decentralize yourself. Make sure you're in a position where if something happens, you're able to buy or sell. And if your exchange is down, you can try out a different one. And also there's an exchange, an over-the-counter exchange called Caleb and Brown. It's also on my website in the same resources page. Sign up for that account. They're an over-the-counter exchange, which means that they don't use algorithms to trade, or they don't use these online exchanges. They're actually people who are set up with different exchanges and they sell back and forth between each other. It's not algorithms, it's actual people doing it. So Caleb and Brown, they've been around for 10 years now. They're one of the OGs in the crypto industry. And so they're very trusted. Even if you're using Caleb and Brown, make sure to take your coins off of their exchange. They also let you hold your Bitcoin there if you'd like to. I don't recommend it, but you could if you're not overly comfortable storing your own Bitcoin. But just make sure you get an account there. It takes about a week to get approved through Caleb and Brown. And even if you have no intentions of buying or selling Bitcoin in the future, just make sure you get set up now before the flood of new accounts come and you're kind of left sitting there waiting for your account to be verified. So it's better just to start preparing for this stuff now while the markets are down, while things are kind of slow, because we know that everything goes in cycles, right? So it's not a matter of, I guess I shouldn't say that legally, but you know what I was about to say. It's cycles, and we know probably what's going to happen next. Whenever that is, we don't know. But get yourself set up now while you can. Winter's a good time to do that. Let's move on. So I talked about Ethereum. I talked about why I think it's junk, because it's centralized, because there's no fixed supply. They can create as much as they want. They're people who are staking Ethereum right now actually have it all locked up for at least a year or two. So they have no ability to withdraw or sell their Ethereum, which is very scary. And I think that once the general public learns about that, we're going to see some stuff happen with the price as well. And, even before that, but when all the Ethereum that's staked gets unlocked and floods onto the market, you can guess what will happen to the price. So I also mentioned their ties to the World Economic Forum. And so the World Economic Forum has been shit talking Bitcoin for a while now. In 2017, they actually said that if we don't shut off the Bitcoin network right now, this was an article that they published in 2017. And it said, if the Bitcoin network isn't shut off right now, that the world will run out of energy by 2020. The world will run out of energy by the year 2020 if they didn't shut off the Bitcoin network in 2017. So we know that neither of those two things happened, but you have to ask why they hate Bitcoin so much. And it's because they know it's decentralized. They know that they cannot control it. But they've also been pushing certain cryptocurrencies like XRP, like Ethereum. And this is just one example of that. This is on the National Telegraph, whatever that is. But it says the World Economic Forum, this is from their Twitter account. And it says a change in the way Bitcoin is coded could almost eliminate its environmental impact. So they recently changed from proof of stake or proof of work into proof of stake, which is apparently better for the environment because it uses no energy to create, which is creating something out of thin air, essentially. So they're saying that it's better for the environment, but in reality, it just gives them the ability to create more Ethereum without any sort of energy or value going into that. So that's their angle at it, is that it's better for the environment. And so this is just a tweet showing, they have a little video there. I'm not going to play it because I don't want to support them in any sort of way, but that's what I'm saying, is the World Economic Forum is a supporter of Ethereum. Moving on to some Bitcoin lovers, and that is El Salvador. So in the last couple weeks, months, El Salvador has been in the news because they've been talking about issuing Bitcoin bonds. They've been setting up a Bitcoin office in the capital city of El Salvador. And last year, they made Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador. So since then, they've seen a huge increase in tourism there, in infrastructure, in investment. And so there's a whole bunch of other countries now who are kind of looking to do the same thing. And one of those is Madeira, I think it's called. It's another island in South Africa, I believe. But anyways, this is talking about El Salvador. They're issuing Bitcoin bonds. So you're able to invest in bonds backed by Bitcoin instead of the government. So if you're investing in the government of Canada bonds right now, you're basically saying that I have so much faith in the government that I think that in 5 years from now, they're going to be able to pay me my bond premium plus whatever interest was earned on that. I think I would rather put my money in a bond that's backed by Bitcoin. That's just me, not financial advice, but I think that they're going to get a lot of attention once this goes on the market. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are buying the bonds because as it stands right now, if you're an investor, whether an institutional or an individual, it is quite hard to have direct exposure to Bitcoin, especially if you're a public company. But they're able to hold these bonds, right? They're recognized as a type of security that these companies can invest in. So I think that this is going to be very big for El Salvador, and it's going to continue to lead by example of what other small countries like El Salvador could do in the future. Moving on, I just got back from a road trip across the USA, which is why I didn't do a news show last week, but we traveled from Saskatchewan all the way to Florida. And along the way, in a lot of the gas stations in the States, there was Bitcoin ATMs where you could convert your cash into Bitcoin with using the ATM. So this article is by CoinDesk. It's talking about the partnership that Circle K, which is a big gas station in the USA, they signed a contract with Bitcoin Depot, which is an ATM dealer, Bitcoin ATM dealer. And so I just wanted to talk about the fact that we saw a lot of Bitcoin ATMs at the gas stations that we stopped at. And I think that this is probably going to be coming to Canada soon. There's already one in Brandon, I think, and there has been for a few years. The guy's way ahead of his time. But I'm actually going to be meeting with a bank or a credit union here in the next couple months. They've asked me to come do a presentation on explain to them what Bitcoin is and how I see it in the future, and maybe some things that they could implement to kind of set themselves apart from competition. So I think that Bitcoin ATMs could play a part in that, in terms of the bank being able to generate income from Bitcoin and people wanting to convert cash into Bitcoin or whatever it may be. So I just want to mention that on here. And something else, I usually end these with something new that I've come across, whether that's a platform, exchange, or a resource. And this is something I came across recently. It's called freespoke.com. And so it's similar to Google, or what's the other one that people use? DuckDuckGo. It's a search engine. So I really like this one because it gives a ton of results and it doesn't have any sort of agenda that I've found anyways. And it also tells you what type of news outlet published this article. So this one says, El Salvador government seeks Congress approval to issue Bitcoin-backed bonds. That's from Yahoo News, and it says that it's a Democratic, left-leaning news reporter. This is, I don't know what the Business Insider, it says Middle, so that's who talked about this article. And so I just think that it's important that they're transparent in the sense that this is where it's from. They lean towards the left, they're middle, or they're right, and you can see the full picture of it, and you can decide which one you want to take a look at. So unlike Google, who just shoves stuff down your face and censors what is able to be seen on Google, I think that freespoke.com does a good job of finding a bunch of information online and being transparent in terms of what the source is on it. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Check out freespoke.com if you want a different search engine from Google. But we're back here, and I think that's it for this week. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out because I see this little internet thing at the top saying that it had weak signal. So hopefully this worked. If not, I'll be doing this all over again on a different time. So we'll see. Thanks once again for watching. Thanks for subscribing, those who do. Thanks who have been liking the channel. If you've been getting any sort of value or learning anything from this channel, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me, and share it with some friends. The more people we can get talking about Bitcoin and believing in Bitcoin, the further away we'll get from the centralization that we've been raised in and spent our whole lives in that system. So I'm going to leave it there. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.